Have you ever played a game that just clicks, and just when you think it couldn't get better, it does? I don't think it's any exaggeration when I say that Ball Pit is absolute Game of the Year material. Is this an opinion? Of course. But am I going to treat it as the gospel? You better believe I am. Ball Pit isn't just your average roguelite game. No. This stuff has layers to it. I'm talking about onions. You shoot balls, you defeat enemies with balls, the balls bounce and ricochet, rinse, and repeat. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To explain what exactly I love about this game, I think we need to go back to the beginning. In Ball Pit, we take control of characters who venture towards the pit of what was once their home, Balbalon. From the very start of the game, we're immediately thrust into the gameplay. And can I just say that as much as I enjoy cinematic cutscenes at the start of the game, I can find some solace in actually engaging with it the moment I start. Well, okay, it's not immediate, but it's real quick and that's what matters. The game doesn't take too long to explain itself, nor does it keep you waiting. Right away, I'm just plopped right there and shooting balls. The main core of the game is balls. You shoot balls, you bounce balls. Your balls are your power. You left click to shoot balls in the direction of your mouse crosshair, and right next to your crosshair is the amount of balls you have left to shoot. It's so simple and yet so ingenious. What's the big deal, right? The big deal is that because you have to aim with the mouse, your eyes don't have to travel far to see your ammo count. Now, ignoring the fact that I didn't realize until maybe an hour or two into my playthrough, we can also note that the enemies are making their way to the bottom of the screen. If you don't deal with them by the time they reach the bottom, they'll attack and deal damage. Of course, it doesn't take long before my first death, but that's par for the course in these roguelites. In between runs, you harvest resources at your base and use said resources to create new buildings. As you play through each level, you'll be able to find blueprints which allow you to make said buildings. It's pretty standard for roguelites to have this sort of progression. So I keep playing, finding what each ball does, building new buildings, harvesting, rinse, and repeat. Along the way, I begin unlocking new characters that affect how my balls work. The Itchy Finger doesn't really have great aim, but he can pump out balls twice as fast as other characters and will keep launching any available balls. And while doing this, he can move at full speed while shooting. The first class you play, the Warrior, offers nothing. He's meant to act as a tutorial class, letting you get a feel for the game. And each of these characters starts off with a different starter ball. The key to defeating these levels is knowing how to build balls that complement your character. During a level, your characters will gain experience by collecting these colored cubes known as gems. As you do, your stats improve and you get to pick either a new ball or a passive. Knowing your stats is key to getting a good build. Each character starts with different stats, however the letter code here is the same. These affect how fast your stat will grow per level. You have the following: Endurance, Strength, Leadership, Speed, Dexterity, and Intelligence. Endurance is just how much HP you have. While it's the most simple stat, it'll be important for lasting longer as you progress. Of course, as you get better at the game, the less you worry about it. Strength is the base damage of your balls. The higher it is, the more damage they do on hit. Leadership will determine the number of baby balls you have and their damage. These are the smaller ones that don't have powers like the regular balls. Speed affects how fast you and your balls move, so not only can you avoid attacks easier, but your balls will be able to bounce faster, increasing your DPS. Dexterity represents your crit rate and your rate, aka the speed at which you shoot balls. Lastly, Intelligence affects the power of AoE, status effects, and the power of passive that you have. Altogether, these 6 stats are the core that will determine how you build each character in each run. While starting out, I found myself really enjoying balls that deliver AoE damage such as Laser and Earthquake. I've always been a sucker watching hordes of enemies get mowed down all at once. It's a feeling that exemplifies what I enjoy about mage-based gameplay in other genres. Of course, the balls that created other balls such as Broodmother and Eggsag were decent picks, though I wasn't a fan of the ones with cooldowns. And you'd certainly be a bot if you ended up using one of those with a ball that didn't, cause you'd inherit the cooldown, which of course gimps you. I did love experimenting with the fusions and seeing what combinations I could take advantage of. Just playing through the game was enough for me. There's a joy in discovery, especially when you have no idea what to do. Then I discovered evolution. You see, fusing 2 specific balls will result in a completely new one. And because it's a new ball, it can be fused with another ball, including another evolved one. This completely changed what I thought was possible and only served to make me even more curious. Just what combinations could I get? While it's easy to look up the answers online, I feel that it'll only ruin the experience. Testing out balls and their fusions and evolutions is key to improvement. You can argue that certain games really were made to be used with guides, sure, but in today's world, games are built to avoid as much confusion as possible. Ball Pit is a simple enough game that you really should avoid looking up guides at all, at least until you beat it, in my humble opinion. Tips? Sure, but definitely avoid finding out what every ball does and how you acquire it. And trust me on that, you'll thank me later, just like how you'll thank me for subscribing. Eventually, I managed to complete the Boneyard for the first time with the Warrior. I wanted to get a feel for the game first before trying out the Itchy Finger. You might have noticed that I also had some buildings in the hub world as well. Certain buildings net you a new character or serve a function such as more resources, but we can talk about those later. Eventually, I cleared the Boneyard with both characters, acquiring a gear each time I did. With that, I unlocked a new level. I spent money expanding so I had more space to work with. On top of that, I built another house to start another character. Things were slow at the start. You harvest according to the number of characters you have, so I had 2 of them to go out and bounce off of things to get their resources, but things pick up fast. With completion of the cozy home, I unlocked the cohabitants, twins who both shoot out their own set of balls at the same time. The catch is that they deal half damage, so essentially you're technically no different in power than anyone else. The key here is that you're shooting twice as much as anyone else. This means you can proc effects twice as often, and if you get some good bounce going, you can really start ramping damage. It'll take time before I adjust to it. For now, I had to focus on clearing the snowy shore. In this level, enemies are essentially similar to the last, so now you'll start seeing these cracked ice circles on occasion. Walking on them will cause you to slip and move a bit faster. On top of that, some enemies will have ice coated on either its front, back, or sides, which blocks damage. So now you have to start taking more angled shots into account. After getting used to shooting wherever I wanted, now I need to start improving on where I shoot them. The longer you have balls bouncing off the walls on enemies, the more damage you'll accumulate. Simple, but effective. I found that aiming through small gaps really gets balls to ricochet at an extremely fast pace. It's extremely satisfying to pull off. I do make it to the boss, though I get wiped. While the boss from the Boneyard only required to aim for its crown, this one requires you to time your shots in between Tundra shields. Not only that, but it'll also shoot out these same Tundra shields in quick succession forward and back. For now, I merely persist as I build up my base. At this point, I've also unlocked 2 more characters, the Repentant and the Embedded. The Repentant allows balls to have a 5% damage increase every time they bounce. However, once they hit the back wall, they'll return to the player dealing damage to every enemy they pass through. And the Embedded causes balls to always pierce enemies until they hit a wall. Along with them, is the first of the 6 stat scaling buildings. By upgrading these, I can eventually turn all of my character stat ranks to S. By doing so, they'll gain even more stats per level up in that respective one. The progression really starts to ramp up from here now that we've gotten a handle on the mechanics. Now we have to improve our stats in how we play. During my runs, I found that both Repentant and Embedded really offered an experience in the game I hadn't felt before. Usually, if I wanted the ball to go through enemies, I'd have to take something like Wind or Ghost. In this case, however, that's somewhat bypassed. Remember when I talked about how shooting at certain angles was key? Well, just imagine having your balls ricochet at the backline repeatedly with the Embedded. I really applaud the developers for coming up with new and creative ways of playing this game. Each character offers an experience that's bound to cater towards a certain group of people, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. At this point, I've unlocked the speed scaling building as well as a few that just increase a particular stat. I've also upgraded my resources so that I can gather more of them per harvest. Having more characters means more of them will bounce off of buildings, finishing their construction faster. There's something comforting about the main game mechanics translating to the base building. It makes you keep what you learned in mind to optimize your harvest. In any case, as I keep playing through Snowy Shore, I began to really take advantage of the fusion reactor mechanic. Compared to when I first started, my enemy clears were getting faster as I understood the character's strengths and weaknesses. It feels really good when you take advantage of a certain angle to get consecutive bounces. And it's through that improvement that I began to beat the boss. Just like that, I've achieved the necessary gears to unlock the 3rd level as well as several more blueprints. While the initial hour or so was slow, it didn't really feel like that to me when I started. Only now upon looking through this footage do I feel like it's much slower than I remember. That's just what comes naturally with improvement. The very moves you once did yourself are now seen differently with experience. With all of that said, I've unlocked the next character, the Cognitator. Yeah, this one sucks. All he does is automatically choose your upgrades, evolutions, and fusions. In nearly every case, that just means you're leaving your build up to luck. And while you are left to some luck in what you find in your run, leaving one of the most pivotal gameplay decisions to ChatGPT isn't really desirable. It's essentially a challenge run in every sense of the word, so I won't dwell on them too long. Now that we're at the Liminal Desert, the enemies will start doing more than just stand around. You'll have to avoid your fair share of fireballs and laser beams. This is on top of the occasional sand pit, which will slow you down drastically whenever you move through it. On top of the increased durability of each enemy, it'll take you plenty of tries before you start clearing it. Roguelites are built upon the idea of constantly failing so that you can eventually become stronger in the next run. And it's not just about being stronger, it's about being a better player in general. You start to learn what works and what doesn't. And in the case of the next character I've unlocked, this rings especially true. The empty nester has absolutely zero baby balls. However, the trade-off is that you instead shoot multiple instances of the special ball you're currently loaded with. So what did I mean by what I said before? Well, chances are that you most likely kept the auto-fire feature on, and for good reason. However, with the empty nester, this is actually a deficit to your gameplay. See, when you use the auto-fire, your character will automatically shoot whatever ball it has left. In the case of our selected character, it will always fire as soon as it has one of its balls returned. If you don't see the problem, don't worry, I didn't either. Now, take a look at what happens when I do manual fire. Do you see the difference yet? By giving ourselves manual control, which you usually don't do, it means we're always taking advantage of firing 4 special balls every single time. Yes, your DPS suffers with this class, but the trade-off is worth it, especially if your balls deal AoE damage, and that's usually one of my preferred damage types anyway. It's also thanks to this character that I eventually make it to the boss. This boss is just nothing but projectiles across multiple directions. On occasion, they'll switch it up with laser beams. All in all, a decent fight, and with that we cleared for the first time. All that's left is to collect the gears once more. Aside from the usual harvesting and building, we unlock the next character, the Shade. Unlike every other character, he shoots balls from the backline, as well as having a base crit chance of 10%. The idea of shooting from the back is its own form of fun. After all, you get to immediately bounce your balls until they eventually reach the bottom. So, theoretically, you're already in a good shooting position. Of course, that means you can't really shoot for specific angles as much as you want. This is especially true when shooting from the front means you can work your way back and forth. With this class, you don't have that luxury. It does benefit quite well from passives that love bouncing and raising your critical hits. Personally, it's not my favorite, but it's still decent. Now, the next character I unlocked, that's one of my favorites. The makeshift Sisyphus also shares a similar drawback with the empty nester. No baby balls. In addition, his balls can't deal damage through direct hits. However, his AoE and status damage is multiplied by 4. This means he is the AoE class to go with. The difference is extremely noticeable and is, in my opinion, one of the most fun and best classes in the game. If you can build right, he can really just nuke the screen with AoE. He's also a class that you really don't have to stress too much over. Overall, a ton of fun, and a lot of players think highly of him, and it's through him that I gained the second gear needed to advance to the next level. The Fungal Forest is where the game really starts expecting you to always be on your toes, as you'll have to avoid marked areas where attacks will eventually land. Now, it was like that in the previous map, but it really begins to ramp up here, especially with the mini-bosses. Speaking of the boss, this time it's just a group of enemies clustered together, which highlights how fun it is to use AoE balls. With that, we obtain ourselves another gear. And with it, I want to draw attention to something. Throughout this playthrough, I've been accumulating new buildings which either give characters or help increase my stats. By defeating the fungal boss for the first time, I've acquired 3 blueprints. While one of these is just a basic pickup aura increase and the other levels up your starting ball, the last one will change the way you see this game forever. This, in my honest opinion, is where the player power spike truly begins. Matchmaker gives you the amazing ability of bringing 2 characters on a run, combining their abilities. This single-handedly permanently alters your brain chemistry in a way that produces endless dopamine. By having 2 characters, you can experiment with all sorts of ball combinations. Of course, there are certain characters you aren't allowed to bring together, but that's fair. Speaking of, our next unlockable character is the Shield Bearer. Not only does he start with the somewhat rare Iron Ball, but he can reflect balls back with his shield, and every time he bounces balls with it, it'll deal 100% more damage. Here's another fun character that rewards you for playing ping pong with your balls. Pause. Anyways, he's a bit slow, so do keep that in mind. However, you could combine him with the Itchy Finger to have full speed movement while shooting and bouncing balls. Have I told you how much I love this game? Now, unfortunately, I seem to have accidentally stopped recording for a good portion of my playthrough. Thankfully, it's nothing too major that'll affect the video. I'll just quickly talk about the next character unlock. The Spendthrift is a pretty simple character. He shoots all the balls you have at the same time in a wide arc. It doesn't sound like much, but there's an advantage to not having to wait to shoot all your balls at once. Besides, watching balls go across the screen is its own fun. Regardless, I spend a good chunk of time clearing the level with all sorts of character combinations. I make sure to unlock any new buildings that I can, and I'm really getting into the groove of passive resource generation. You can really see just how little I got at the start compared to now. It might not seem major, but you'll see some results in a bit. Thanks to all of these buildings, the initial run goes a lot smoother than it ever did before. Not only can I have my starter ball at the max level, but I can also do the same for the secondary character. This means I can have near instant evolutions and fusions as soon as possible. The sooner you reach your power spike, the easier to run after all. Also, did I mention I forgot to record another bit of section for the playthrough again? I don't mean to, and this is the last time, I promise. The next character I unlock is the Juggler, who has the ability to throw balls at wherever your mouse is pointed. You can do this to easily create some powerful bounce combos to get some instant DPS going. And the other character is the Flagellant, who has the cool ability to allow balls to bounce normally off the bottom of the screen. Basically, the only way balls go back to you is if you catch them. On certain builds, you can easily flood the screen with balls. It's honestly super fun. I also unlocked the next two levels, the Gory Grasslands and the Smoldering Depths. At this point, the enemies really just get tankier, and it's up to you to really maximize your runs. Additional buildings just serve to grant me bonuses to gameplay, such as guaranteed upgrades with the fusion reactors and sending characters out on levels without playing. With even more resource generation on my fingertips, I'm just raking in more and more resources. Oh, I also unlocked yet another new character, the Tactician. He basically just turns the game into a turn-based affair. So every few seconds you pause and you just shoot and watch the balls play out. Once they all return to you, the next turn occurs. It's something a bit cool the first time, but it's not really my cup of tea. Still, another character means I gain more helpers for harvesting. At this point in the game, it's all about finding the best balls for your runs. Once you do that, the game becomes a lot more about finding ways to clear it with little effort. I even unlocked the second to last area, the Heavenly Gates. We're essentially almost done with the base game, and it never really felt like my time was wasted or it really dragged. Part of the excitement I have with games is progression and the joy of discovery. It's a real reflection of how good the game is at escalating the power accordingly. But enough of that. Let's talk about the level because there's actually something to talk about. Aside from the usual increase in enemy power and tankiness, this level is also sporting certain enemies who have the power to steal and keep whatever ball struck it. Believe me, it was rough the first few go-arounds. It hurts me especially because I just love to go Sisyphus. I just can't help myself. It also doesn't help when the mini-bosses also have the same mechanic but for 3 balls. Not to mention some of the enemies will hover on occasion and avoid your attacks. Even so, as long as you know what you're doing, it shouldn't give you much grief. While clearing the level, I also unlocked the Radical. What does he do? Plays the game and upgrades automatically. That's right, you now have ChatGPT play the game for you. Now, this character is extremely RNG dependent and by no means is he really meant to be used on serious runs. No, his main purpose is to just allow you to do some automatic grinding if you don't feel like playing. Now, let's talk about someone more interesting. The Falconer has 2 birds which both shoot out the same bolt at the same time. No damage reduction here like with the twins. The caveat is that the birds are on the left and right side of the walls, so your angle of attack is much more limited, so you'll have to watch out for that. For me, it just means more Sisyphus abuse, and with that, we finally unlock the last level, the Vast Void. Along with that is the building that made me say goodbye to any resource troubles. The Workers Guild lets me gain resources while offline. Now, I can just keep getting resources even while working. From here, it's just about getting the remaining unlocks. The Void adds these black holes that warp you and your balls. All in all, it's just another level to clear. Speaking of, it's time for our second to last character unlock. The Carouser causes all balls to briefly orbit him when returning back. If you've ever wanted to feel like the Rings of Jupiter, well, here you are. He can be really fun since his playstyle works with essentially every character. Being a literal donut ring is fun. And now, we can talk about the final character unlock as of the recording of this video. The Physicist essentially causes your balls to be affected by Earth's gravity as they pull to the back of the screen. Once they do so, they're returned back to you. While you lack Crazy Ricochet, you do get guaranteed ball damage as they stick to the enemies. Just like that, we have covered all available characters. Each of them, for the most part, are fun to play and get even cooler with certain character combinations. I hope I've stressed enough just how fun this game is, because I don't think I'm able to fluff a video for ad revenue. Also, by the way, I only learned within the late end of my playthrough that you can also fuse certain items as well. I guess it never really came up until then, which is hilarious. Regardless, I also unlocked Endless Mode, which lets me play the game past the boss until I straight up lose. It gets harder and harder the longer it goes, so if you're looking to test yourself, well, here it is. Aside from that, I've beaten the Void with several characters, which essentially means I've beaten the base game. From here on, you're free to challenge New Game Plus and keep on playing against harder, tougher versions of the same enemy. Start to finish, this game was an absolute treat. The thrill of beating enemies to death with your balls is something that you can only experience for yourself. If the idea of watching a clusterfuck of balls almost tear your computer's performance apart sounds appealing to you, then I think you're in business. This game could appeal to a lot of different gamers, mainly because there's so many different ways to approach the game, and yet it retained its core gameplay from start to finish. I was glued the whole way through and beat the base game in about 20 hours. I cannot recommend it enough. Try it for yourself and see how you like it. Sometimes it's not the fancy AAA game that gets you. It's like a gem hidden deep in the mountains. And with that, I bid you all farewell. Have a good one.